Greetings one and all, and welcome to another episode of Gurdjieff Ponderings by me, wiseacring away. I wanted to talk a little bit about imagination. I spent a lot of my life, my early years in imagination, daydreaming away of a better life, daydreaming away of meeting people that understood me and were like me. And we all like to have a good old daydream, though, as Ouspensky reminds us, and Gurdjieff. This kind of daydreaming is a waste of time. And I have here pictures of a statue that I saw when I was in Liverpool recently. And this is by William Reynolds Stevens, Castles in the Air, made in 1901. And it reads, "The girl is reading some fairy stories, but the castles in the air described in the book are real to her vivid imagination." Which I'm just going to quickly add, I was like that. I'd read a book and I could visualise it and be there and think about it for ages afterwards. You know, fiction books when I was a child, of better worlds and such like. Anyway, continuing. Thus they appear above and beneath her throne with silver and precious materials used to give them a dreamlike effect. The pedestal and throne isolate the girl from reality and place her in the world of fancy and thought. Here the concern of the so-called new sculpture for poetry and the ideal, rather than for the everyday world, is given an almost literal emphasis. And she's, you know, a pretty little girl, kind of reminds me a little bit of Alice in Wonderland. But when you look at her face, her eyes are so wide. She is lost in another world. She is not awake. She is living in imagination. And I see a lot of people walking down the street like that, and I probably was myself back in the days when I just used to wander about in my own world, not connected to this world at all, because I was trying to escape from it all. And I still see people today wandering around with this glassed over look, glassed over their eyes as they're in their own little world, which is why I never want to be able to read other people's minds. I don't want to be caught up in their fantasies, their dreams, their desires. Her dress is very pretty, full of flowers, and it's interesting. She has that book, obviously, on her knees that she's reading from, but now she's pondering, which we should be doing when we read Gurdjieff's books or Ouspensky's books. We should read a bit and then ponder on it, and perhaps then we'd have that glassed over look as we feel its writings work inside us. And at the top of the chair she's sitting on, there's some castles, you know, the castles in the air, the daydreaming fantasy world that this is depicting, that most people live in their imagination. There's also little castles around the bottom of the pedestal. And Gurdjieff says that imagination is a consequence of the properties of the organ Kunde-Buffer. And that's from page 356 in Beelzebub's Tales, which I'm just getting together. And he talks about they also believe, but that this sacred impulse in them does not function independently, as it does in general in all the free-centered beings existing on the various other planets of our great universe, upon which beings with the same possibilities breed. But it arises dependent upon some or other factors, which have formed in their common presences, owing as always to the same consequences of the properties of the organ Kunde-Buffer, as for instance the particular properties arising in them which they call vanity, self-love, pride, self-conceit, and so forth. In consequence of this, the free-brain beings here are for the most part subject just to the perceptions and fixations in their presences of all sorts of synchra posarums, or as it is expressed here, they believe any old tale. It is perfectly easy to convince beings of this planet of anything you like, provided only during their perceptions of these fictions there is evoked in them, and there proceeds, either consciously from without, or automatically by itself, the functioning of one or another corresponding consequence of the properties of the organ Kunde-Buffer, crystallized in them from among those that form what is called the subjectivity of the given being, as for instance self-love, vanity, pride, swagger, imagination, bragging, arrogance, and so on." End quote. So this imagination is all part of that Kunde-Buffer which makes us see everything topsy-turvy, because we can't live in this real world. We fall to imagination and imagine how we would like our lives to be. We imagine what could happen in the future. We imagine something that happened in the past being reenacted in a different way, perhaps with a better result for ourselves, and so on and so on. And of course, most fiction books are figments of the author's imagination. I used to love a good fiction book, but I very rarely read them these days because I see how they do take me out of thinking for myself, and they are usually quite easy to read, so I just do it as a little break from my brain now and then when maybe I need to just I was going to say escape then, but yeah, it is an escape sometimes to have a good fiction book to read. But I notice most people on trains and tubes when I'm going about, because more and more people are reading books, which is great to see, they're all crime books or books about men who have broken free from the government that they're working for and are working, as a mercenary or something like that. So they're all quite heavy books that they're reading. If I'm going to read a book or watch a TV series, I do watch some kind of fantasy that is not of this world, because then my mind is reminded that this is not real. I do like a bit of Alice in Wonderland or perhaps Narnia, or if I'm watching a TV show, something like Star Trek or Star Wars, an out of this world kind of book or story to follow. And I'm just going to read a little bit more of Gurdjieff, which is from page 1211 of Beelzebub's Tales. Thanks to correctly conducted self-observation, a man will from the first days clearly grasp and indubitably establish his complete powerlessness and helplessness in the face of literally everything around him. With the whole of his being, he will be convinced that everything governs him, everything directs him. He neither governs nor directs anything at all. He is attracted and repelled not only by everything animate which has in itself the capacity to influence the arising of some or other association in him, but even by entirely inert and but even by entirely inert and inanimate things, without any self-imagination or self-calming impulses, which have become inseparable from contemporary men. He will cognize that his whole life is nothing but a blind reacting to the said attractions and repulsions. He will clearly see how his what are called world outlooks, views, character, taste, and so on are moulded, in short, how his individuality was formed and under what influences its details are liable to change. And I'm going to end it there because I wanted to go on to saying this is all about we need to get to know ourselves, know thyself, as it used to be written across the doorway of the mystic schools. And we have to recognise our mechanicalness and how we are directed by other beings and other people and other ways and laws of this planet. And once we can observe ourselves in that, we can start observing our reactions to it. We can also start observing how we break ourselves free of this, break ourselves free of this law, these laws that are playing upon us and directing us and keeping us caught up in the lunatic asylum that Gurdjieff talks about. But these governances on us, everything that's directing us, also takes us back into imagination. And I'm sure that many of you know that adverts are there to tell us what we should be buying, what we should be like and such like. And a lot of TV shows are like that as well. But we're learning to break free from that. We want to be an individual who's awake. And again, I was talking to someone recently about the 7 types of man. And this guy was going on and on about how he's awake. I do like to remind people, we are waking up. We are not awake. We are waking up. Or, if there is anybody that's awake in this world, they could help lead a few of us on into waking up ourselves. But man number 4 is we've taken a notice of that the way the world is not quite right. And that we don't want to be either a man number 1, number 2, number 3. We want to bring the 3 of them types of man inside of us together so that we're more balanced. And this balancing of our centres will help us to wake up more and finally reach awakenness so that we can see through what's going on in this world, lift that veil, as it said, see the illusions that are put upon everybody and how the different laws on this planet work upon ourselves. We're trying to work towards having less and less laws working on us. Gurdjieff uses the word abnormality a lot. We're living an abnormal life, and all these abnormalities play on our psyche so that we become more and more asleep and living in imagination. But what exactly is normal? What is it to be normal? Maybe that's something that we can't quite see yet because we're not awake enough to see what normality should be, though I still believe it's a connection to the divine source. That is normal. And then we'll be fitting in with the harmony of the universe and the laws and the workings of how the universe is. Ouspensky talks a lot about imagination in the Fourth Way book, which is more of a question and answer, and someone asks him, as regards imagination, if you are thinking instead of imagining, should you be aware of the effort all the time? And the answer from Ouspensky is, yes, you will be aware of it, not so much of effort as of control. You will feel that you control things. They do not just go on by themselves. And the next question is, when you say remember yourself, do you mean by that to remember after you've observed yourself, or do you mean to remember the things we know are in us? And Ouspensky replies, no, take it quite apart from observation. To remember oneself means the same thing as to be aware of oneself. I am. Sometimes it comes by itself. It is a very strange feeling. It is not a function, not thinking, not feeling. It is a different state of consciousness. By itself it only comes for very short moments, generally in quite new surroundings. One says to oneself, how strange, I am here. This is self-remembering. At this moment you remember yourself. Later, when you begin to distinguish these moments, you reach another interesting conclusion. You realize that what you remember from childhood are only glimpses of self-remembering, because all that you know of ordinary moments is that things have happened. You know you were there, but you do not remember anything exactly. But if this flash happens, then you remember all that surrounded this moment. And I'm going to end that quote there because I always have people ask me what's the difference between self-remembering and self-observation. And of course, one of the most dangerous types of imagination is negative thinking, negative imagination. I think Ouspensky calls it negative emotions. You know, when you're imagining things that either don't exist or things that are going to happen or what people are going to do to you. You know, you imagine walking down the street and getting mugged or beaten up. A lot of these fears and worries and imaginings that we have don't actually happen. Another question put to Ouspensky in the Fourth Way book is, I feel my chief obstacle is imagination, chiefly about myself. Is there any special work against this? And Ouspensky replies, imagination may be very different. If there are special ways, it is only possible to arrive at them through a detailed study. If you ask me in general, I can only answer, self-remembering. If you mean daydreams, they are only half of our imaginings, and the most innocent half. Certainly they mean loss of time, but we waste time in so many ways that a little more or less does not make much difference. It is much more dangerous if you imagine certain qualities in yourself, in other people, in humanity or in nature, and then come to believe in these imaginary ideas and put your faith in them. We are surrounded by these imaginary qualities, and it is with these that we must struggle. The next question is, in trying to resist imagination, should one find the cause of it? And Ouspensky answers, no, stop it at once. There are always causes. Replace it by something else, some intentional thinking. The next question is, why is it of no value to observe and study imagination as a means to self-knowledge? And Ouspensky answers, you will very soon see that it does not give anything. Imagination always turns in the same circle. It is an uncontrolled mind activity, and by imagination we create many false values, keep to them, and use them in our thinking. This is why imagination is dangerous. We do not verify things. We imagine things either because we like them or sometimes because we dislike them and are afraid of them. We live in an imaginary world. And someone quickly quips afterwards, by escaping from reality? And Ouspensky answers, not consciously escaping, but it happens like that. It is partly due to mental laziness. For instance, it is easier to imagine a thing than to study it. And I think that's quite true, actually. A lot of us over the years would rather go and imagine being we know it all and have become man number 5, man number 6, number 7. I think that's quite good imagination if we're doing it consciously to try and help us work our way towards it. And that will probably remind us to keep doing the work. But we easily slip into imaginations or imaginings of how our life could be better or how things could be different with various people. Or, I remember as a teenager, you imagine being with your heroes, your favourite film stars or pop stars, and lots of people waste imagination on that kind of thing. So although Ouspensky says it is still a waste of time, sometimes it can be constructive imagination if we use it purposefully. And of course, Ouspensky was all about time, and time is of the essence. The mighty Hieropath is eating away at everything. And I still believe that we can stop time if we can wake ourselves up by bringing all our centres into some kind of harmony, so that we then reach up and talk to our higher centres. Our higher centres are always talking down towards us, but we can't hear them because we're all closed up in our lower centres, which are distracting us, usually with imagination, I should think, from reaching up to our higher centres. Because one of the questions put to Ouspensky is, imagination is one of the strongest things in man, yet it is the most useless. Why? And Ouspensky replies, it is a bad habit, a form of sleep, a weakness. It is easy. It does not need any effort. All the rest needs effort. And that's one of the most important things about the work, is we need to put in the effort. And as he says here, imagination is so easy. It's so easy just to slip into a dream state, when really we need to make the effort to wake up. Somebody else asked Ouspensky, I cannot say whether something is imagination or not, and I do not know how to begin to recognise it. And Ouspensky says, nobody can help you to begin. You must begin yourself. You must catch yourself in some kind of imagination. I do not mean exactly daydreaming. You must have some stand of imagination. Then, when in doubt, you can compare. Imagination can take 3 forms: passive imagination, imagination expressing itself in talk, and imagination expressing itself in activity. There are lines and lines of our activity, each quite different from another. Some start with effort and go on with effort. Others may be imagination. One may think it is effort, when in reality it is imagination expressing itself in activity, which cannot stop and needs no effort. Talking is the same. Some people must talk, others must do something, but both are manifestations of the same thing. And then somebody asked Ouspensky, I notice that imagining seems to take place in memory, going from one association to another. Is this a correct observation? And Ouspensky replies, no, memory by itself is not responsible for anything. Memory is impartial. It supplies material for whatever you want. You may want it for serious thinking, imagination, expression of negative emotions, and so on. Going back to talking, which Ouspensky was talking about in his reply to one of the questions, we all have met those people that just never shut up and do their mechanical talking, that talk and talk and talk and repeat themselves and forget that they've already said something. This is something I do notice in myself. I really, with the Gurdjieff work, it really helped me to pay attention when I'm talking and what I'm saying to what person, so that I try not to repeat myself. I remember that I said this to someone or I said that to somebody else. And that has helped me with my own communication with people, though it does sometimes roll people that I can remember conversations, but shows that many people talk to us and don't remember a thing of what they've said, or that they've already told us this or that or whatever. But I do feel that the talking part of the Gurdjieff work is very important, and we must speak only what is needed to be said and not do mechanical talking. And it's maybe quite weird that I'm saying that, since I'm doing all this wiseacring on these little shows, but I hope these shows do help you stay on the path of the Gurdjieff work and help you to jump out of imagination and into reality. Thank you for watching, listening. Thank you to those that have bought my books. I still don't have any monetary help from YouTube, since I'm still demonetized because of being naughty, putting up Vladimir Solovyev's The Antichrist. But you can still buy my books through my website, or if you are local, I've done a few lunches and dinners. People have bought me lunch and dinner at various places, very kind of them. And, I'm happy to connect. Until next time, peace and love to one and all.